Marci LaRouech, welcome to Acquiring Minds.
Thank you.
Marci, you bought an HR consulting firm. This is a story of very strong business buyer fit. But even for those of us who don't come from the world of HR, there's much to learn. Start us off, please, Marci, with a little background on you and where and how buying a business ended up on your radar.
Sure. Thanks, Will. Really appreciate this opportunity. So I grew up in the Midwest, went to school in Chicago, and kind of fell into HR in about 2006 here in Orlando, Florida, and at a PEO, so a professional employer organization. So doing co-employment like workers' comp, payroll, healthcare, et cetera, for small businesses, mostly here in Central Florida, but a little bit across the country. And it was a very quickly growing PEO here called CoAdvantage. And had a great experience. 4 years. Didn't know anything about HR when I got there, and knew a little bit more by the time I left. And I was actually recruited to go out to Hawaii, to Honolulu, to another PEO there called ProService. And this is where I first learned. I always thought, even growing up, I was like, I'm going to be a business owner. I didn't really know what that meant, but there was just something about that was appealing. Both my parents were teachers, but my mom had a side hustle of a screen printing business, which was a legit small business in our town where she would do screen printing for all of the local volleyball and basketball teams and 5Ks and all that stuff. And she would actually hand design this before, the computers and everything. She would hand design every design, create the screens in a dark room. I mean, it was a whole extraordinary thing to be exposed to at a young age, but that paid for all of my summer camps, all of our vacations as a family, right? So I could see how that was a beneficial thing, but it wasn't her full-time gig. And so I go out to Hawaii, and it turns out that I am with some of the kind of the OGs of traditional search fund, in that Ben Godsey and Dustin Sellers had done a traditional search fund about 20 years ago and had acquired this PEO out in Hawaii, and were growing it rapidly. And so Dustin hired me there, and that was kind of my first time of hearing about buying a business to become an owner. I just didn't even know that was a possibility. And so learned about it there and had a great experience at ProService, was there for about 4 years, came back to the mainland, was in Chicago for a few years, worked at a few different startups in the HR and fintech space. And while I was there, Dustin was speaking at the Kellogg Booth ETA conference. So he invited me to come and listen to his fireside chat. And then I started to kind of meet these. So I'm probably in my early mid 30s at this point. I started to meet these grad school grads. I'm like, well, if they can do it, I could probably do this, right? It just kind of gave me a little bit of confidence of, I have more actual leadership experience. So I just came from a bit of different background. I didn't have an MBA, but I was like, I think I can hang with these conversations. I think I could do this. Fast forward a few more years, and I was hired to go back out to Hawaii in a hired gun situation by Dustin Sellers to lead Makai HR through a stage of growth and professionalizing and getting it ready to sell. And we exited that business in 2023. And I was the CEO of Makai HR, and it was an extraordinary experience and gave me a full understanding of actually selling a business. So then I said, all right, I've got a little bit of capital, and I've had this great experience leading these prior organizations and being CEO of this HR company. Wanted to come back to the mainland to be closer to family. And I said, all right, this is it. I'm going to do my search. I'm going to actually search to buy a business.
And okay, that was fantastic, Marci. A couple follow-ups. So just to be clear, Ben and Dustin bought a PEO in Hawaii as a traditional search fund 20 years ago?
Right.
Or 20 years ago then. So now 30 years ago.
I don't know the exact date, but I would say it's been at least 20 years. It's between 20 and 25 years. So that's why I say they were really on the cutting edge of, there were no ETA clubs at universities or anything like that. They were very much on the early days of traditional search fund model.
But they were still in the business at that point. So because typically in a traditional search fund model, you're working toward an exit at year 7, call it. But they had been in it for much longer than that. It sounds like. Just curious. I should get them on here.
They were doing what they were, what you consider taking multiple bites of the apple, right? So continuing to go through private equity rounds and doing that. Dustin did eventually exit, which allowed him then to found Makai HR that he hired me to come out and be the CEO of.
So Dustin fully exits the search fund business that he acquired that you were working at in Hawaii, and then starts another one, Makai HR. I guess waiting for his non-compete to expire or somehow getting around the non-compete or waiting it out.
Yep. Waited for it to expire. Yep.
Yeah. And started another one. He must have really liked the business model. And
very much so.
And we're going to get into why it's a great business model, even though what you bought is not a PEO. And then he brought you to be CEO. So they must have really liked you and brought you to run as CEO Mackay. And then Mackay, I don't think you said this, but I recall from the pre-call, actually sells to their original search fund business.
Yes. So we sold
they have
back
the
to
playbook
ProService.
dialed in.
Yes, very much so. So yeah, we sold in 2023 back to ProService, and it was a really great experience of going through that because the gentleman who was leading the sale on their side or the buying process, Jordan Conley, I had worked with actually here in Orlando. So I'd known him for over 15 years. And so, we had a lot of trust. He knew I was running a good solid business. And so we went through the diligence process, all the pieces together, but we eventually had a successful exit it's considered a strategic, but it is, in the small Hawaii market, we sold back to ProService.
And this exit was meaningful for you personally?
Yes. Yeah, very much so. Very, very low seven figures, but the most money I ever seen in my life in a single, transaction. But it was I would say it was bittersweet overall. I've heard this from other folks that have been on your podcast and from others. And I had only been there for a few years. So it wasn't like I had, built this company for the last 40 years, like some of our buyer or sellers that we work with in the search side. But I still I was an emotional wreck. I mean, first, the diligence is really, really hard to sell a business. There's no way around it. But, I get this big deposit into my bank account and it was, life-changing from that perspective. But I cried because I loved running that business. I loved being I loved the team that I got to work with. I loved our clients. I loved being a part of the community there. It was life-changing in a lot of ways. But it wasn't the kind of money where I then, I don't ever have to work again, or I can become a philanthropist or something like that, right? Like I still needed to, and still had desire in me to continue to be a part of a business, and really felt like that gave me the runway of actually buying my own business at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you have incredible leadership experience. So that's something many searchers lack. They have not yet ever been managers necessarily, let alone CEOs. How big was Mackay? How many people?
I had about 50 people reporting to me. And it was distributed. So we had a big chunk in Hawaii. We had a lot of people on the mainland, and we had a team in the Philippines as well. So, a great amount of experience there, with all kinds of challenges that come up with, a very fast growing business, in a very specific market, being Hawaii, with a very complicated business model with the PEO. Just really learned a lot. But fortunately, I had great mentorship with, folks like Dustin. Another person that was really pivotal my time there was Ben Anchetta. And he and I worked together at ProService before. And then he had actually gone out and bought an executive recruiting firm there in Hawaii, Inkanen. And he was so helpful in not only eventually me buying, but also the sale process. And he's the one who actually gave me the HBR, how to buy a small business book. But it was in the context of learning how to sell my business and selling Mackay, and just realizing that it's all the same steps. It doesn't matter if it's a $500 billion deal or if it's a $500,000 deal, like you're going to go through the same steps in the process. And so that's actually how I started to get the playbook of like, it taught me how to understand what was happening when I was selling the business, but also it got me revved up of like, okay, I can really buy something now too. So I've had the money, the capital, the experience, and had some mentorship to help me to get there. And I felt like that gave me some serious unfair advantage, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, no, well, exactly. Well, you jumped for it. A lot of people have all of this. Yeah. I mean, you had some alignment of the stars, but you also. Sorry, Marcia, my headset just told me I have a low battery, so I couldn't hear myself. You had all the alignment of the stars, but you jumped, and a lot of people don't. So you took the initiative, so that's wonderful. Just curious, where was it decided in your own mind that you would search? Was it sometime in your Mackay tenure, or was it afterwards you got the low seven figures in your bank account and you're like, what to do now? Oh, that search thing. Like when was it that it crystallized into the next thing?
It was after we sold Mackay. I was very committed to Mackay. I had no reason not to be. There was a lot of opportunity there, and we were doing some really great work. And I had, like I said, I had just an incredible team. Once that chapter was written and closed, that's when it opened up, and I was like, okay, I'm doing it now. I'm going to take, and I gave myself 2 years to search. And I'm going to be pretty serious about this. And that meant, that I was going to have to move from Hawaii. My non-compete is only in the state of Hawaii. And so I had 49 other states by which to do a search in. And I wanted to be closer to family here in Florida and Michigan as well. And so that was, it all just kind of worked out from a timing perspective of like the right time in my life, the right financial time, that I had the ability to relocate, and that I could give myself the ample space that I needed in order to actually commit to a search full time, which is what I did.
Yeah. And I hear you mention a non-compete in Hawaii, or that it was only relevant in Hawaii, or covered Hawaii. So that's to say that you were going to buy something in HR again.
That was my intention. So I was looking at another, a PEO was kind of the first on my list, was finding a small PEO and kind of running a similar playbook to Mackay, growing it, professionalizing it, potentially selling it at some point. I did not want to be on this like every 5-year wheel. That was something that was really intentional in my search. But
say more about that. Say more about that, Marci. Yeah, what do you mean?
The sale of Mackay took a lot out of me. It was hard. It was really, really hard. And we had a great smooth deal. Like I had a wonderful experience all the way around. It was just really hard. And I felt like I did not want to be in a position where I had to do that every 4 to 5 years. I wanted to be in something longer term at this next stage. Like there were times in my career where that was really fun and really interesting. And I was at a number of private equity and VC backed companies. So I've had a lot of that experience. And I just felt like at this stage in my life, it was like, I want to have something long term, and that I can make the choices of when the right time is to exit it, or, step out from the day to day, or whatever that looks like for me, and not feeling like that I was on somebody else's timeline. So it wasn't anything like the model is great. And obviously you can make a lot of money going that route. I just felt like for me, I had taken that, I'd been on that treadmill and then going through a very successful exit, that was actually very smooth. I still felt like, I think I want to take a different, be intentional and take a different path as far as what this next business that I own looks like.
And so it's kind of two things there. The first is just like the process of going through a transaction, the sale, really takes it out of you and consumes a year of your life. Yeah. Thing one that was unpleasant, even though you had a relatively smooth transaction. And then thing two was just like your own time horizon and being able to decide what that was. So not being kind of on like you said, on somebody else's clock to sell after a certain number of years.
Right. And as we talk more about my search, like there was a lot of intentionality about what I wanted to be doing, the time I wanted to be spent doing it, where I wanted to live, a lot of it was a lifestyle play. Not necessarily like I was looking for a quote unquote, lifestyle business, because I think they get a bad rap, and I could argue on that, why that's not a bad rap, but, or they shouldn't have a bad rap, but, that was really intentional for me. And so again, that meant that for me going out and raising money and gosh, I had so many offers. I mean, we made a lot of people a lot of money at Mackay, right? And so a lot of those folks were like, what are you doing next? And then I had investment bankers like, would you, do you want to do a platform play? Like, we can, there's all these different methods that we can go about it, right? And I was just like,
so you really did have the option of doing some sort of roll up, some sort of private equity related buy and build, what have you.
Absolutely. There are not many, specifically in the PEO space, to be very clear. Right. Like it wasn't like I was getting, blank check to do whatever. No. I think I could have raised a traditional search fund and searched for something, because of my previous CEO experience and the successful exit. I think I could have parlayed that into a number of different paths. But the offers that were proactively coming to me after we sold Mackay was in the PEO space, which was, it's hard to walk away. It's hard, like it's enticing from a financial standpoint. And, there's some things that were a lot of fun about that, but I just knew in my heart that wasn't right now. And maybe we'll like 5-10 years from now, I'll get bored and I'll be like, all right, I'm ready. Let's go and do this again. But at this stage right now, I was like, that was a great experience. I am so grateful for it. And I learned a ton. I don't want to redo that playbook right away. And so, yeah, those offers came, and I just said, like, that's just not what I'm searching for right now. But if you know a small PEO that's looking to sell to an individual, keep me in mind, right? So that was always the pitch.
And so what were some of these lifestyle criteria that you were optimizing for?
Yeah, I was really hoping for, a smaller team, a smaller book of business overall. I know I can grow it. I know that I can do a lot of different things, but I didn't want to walk into something that was that had as many complications as we had at Mackay. And that was their own doing, right? Like, as we grew, we had to go that direction. But I kind of wanted to start a little bit smaller, ideally remote first, and having a team that was established and independent enough that they didn't need me to babysit them day to day. That was really important with the search, was that I just didn't want to have folks that really didn't know what they were doing. Now, I get that you got to pay for that experience, right? But that was something that was really important to me, was that I wasn't inheriting a group of very junior employees that I was going to have to manage intently day to day.
And what of the PEO model? Tell us a little bit about that, how it works, why it's appealing as a business model. Why was it Dustin who, when he went back to do a second business, went back to the very same business model? For those who don't know what a PEO is, I guess start with define PEO, please, and then explain to us why it makes it an appealing search business.
Yeah, PEO, professional employer organization, is it's an opportunity for small businesses to take advantage of HR expertise, HR technology, benefits, workers' compensation, EPLI, employment practices liability insurance, all of these things as part of a large group function, so that as small business owners, now I'm a small business owner, I can relate to it, right? Where you're trying to figure these things out on your own, you can work with a PEO, they figured it out for you. And so it's really appealing as far as being able to not only get that kind of level of expertise and that someone else is managing those things for you, but you also get the advantage of being part of a much larger group from a healthcare perspective as far as cost savings are concerned. Same with workers' comp insurance. So, it's an ability to have a really high level of expertise from an HR perspective, not only for you, but also for your employees to call in and ask questions, but also that benefit support and those cost savings that come along with that. So a lot of small business owners take advantage of it, probably not as many as they should, right? Like I do think there is some hesitancy, because you do have to really educate people on what PEO is. And then people say, oh, I don't want to co-employ, right? Because your PEO is paying your taxes for you. And so that is a big advantage for you as a small business, but it does mean that they're going to get paid under the PEO's FEIN number, not yours. It's not as complex as it sounds. It's really quite straightforward and really easy to navigate. A lot of small business owners get a little bit nervous about that and kind of shy away because they don't understand it, but it's a great model. Now, from a ownership perspective and a search perspective, it's also a great model. There is a lot of opportunities to have really sticky client relationships. If you take good care of them and you give them competitive pricing, like, they will stick around. These small business owners will stick around for a very, very long time. They pay a premium, which is called the admin fee, for you to do this work for them. And then right now they are trading at incredibly high multiples. Typically double digits EBITDA is what PEOs are being sold for right now. And so there's a real desire in the PE market, is really interested. There's a lot of PEOs in the country that are consolidating by buying smaller ones, and they're using that as a growth strategy, and they're really heavily backed financially and able to do that. And so, I think that's part of it too, is that there is this buzz in the market that if you know how to run one, manage one, because it takes a lot of managing, because you're doing a lot of things with a lot of different partners, right? Your healthcare provider, your work comp provider, your HRIS system, the technology that you're using. You can manage those really well if you can have a really good team that's taking care of your clients, and you can get competitive pricing for things like, and you can grow that. That's where it gets really appealing for investors and larger PEOs to start to buy you.
So it's extremely sticky revenue. You really, the switching cost of a client is enormous, because they really, that co-employment thing,
co-employment.
plus their knowledge of all of your organization and all the benefits that they're transferring to you. Just once you've got a client, they probably stick around forever. So obviously that's really appealing, and recurring revenue, which usually is kind of one and the same thing. And it's quite scalable too, right?
Yes, very much so. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And all that you described that a PEO does, how is it different than, well, spoiler, the HR consulting firm that you bought, which is not a PEO? How is a kind of an HR consulting firm different from a PEO? Because it sounds like they're similar, or there's overlap, or
Sure. Yeah. There is some overlap, but where we are not similar is we at Seay HR, my company, we are not doing any payroll, workers' comp, healthcare, EPLI insurance. Like, we're not touching any of that. What we are doing is providing incredibly high level of guidance and support for you as a small business owner with your HR compliance strategy, day to day. We're looking at processes, documents, handbooks, helping navigate through challenging HR situations. We have a handful of clients that are actually with PEOs and still hire us because they want a high touch HR service. And that is not all PEOs. I will say there are definitely PEOs like here locally, or Aspen HR. Yeah, I know Mark there, right? I know he's a advertiser. Like, they take really good care of their clients. So we don't have any of theirs. It's some of the larger ones, some of the ones that have maybe grown incredibly quickly and they haven't kept the model as well from a scaling perspective. From an HR high touch perspective, those are the ones that still will pay for us as well on top of what they're paying the PEO, because they want to have somebody who's a little bit more in depth and actually knows their business, and more of a direct relationship, person to person on our side and their side, to help them navigate things through that they're not completely experiencing, but they are still getting all the other benefits of being a part of PEO. So it's important for them to stay with it, but they're willing to pay extra to work with us as well. But that's the big difference, is that we're not, we're no co-employment. It's very different. And so oftentimes we get those business owners that are hesitant about the co-employment model, and they're like, but I just want the HR side. Can you just do that for? Yeah, that's all we do. We're very focused from that perspective. And so that's, I would say, the biggest difference between what we're doing at CHR and as a PEO. A lot of PEOs call themselves HR outsourcing. I think we all just get kind of lumped into this big giant bucket that is saying a business owner or business leader saying, I don't want to do HR. Someone else take that from me. And that owner has options. They can go down the path of a PEO. They can go down a path of a payroll company that has a little bit more of what they call ASO, Administrative Services Outsourcing. We're starting to get a lot of acronyms in our space here, Will, but then you can do HR consulting, just strict HR consulting like what we're doing. There's staffing, HR staffing companies. Like, there's just if you, as a business owner, you're probably not an HR expert. That's just not what you started your business or acquired your business or grew up in your business to learn. You know the basics, generally what not to do. But when it starts to get, especially in our current climate where states are changing regulations, the Fed is changing regulations, they're changing what they're enforcing versus what they're not, like almost on a weekly basis. Like, that's not what, a guy who owns a tire company or a gal who owns a grocery store, like, that's not what they care. Like, that's not what their focus is, but they have to follow those things. So there's all these different paths that you can take, HR consulting being one of those of helping them manage their day-to-day HR. But I would say that, PEO would say we're also HR outsourcing. ASO would also say we're also HR outsourcing. There's just all these different paths that, depending on what the business owner needs or is interested in, that they can go down and get the kind of help that we can give as an industry.
Great. That was great. Thank you, Marci. And an HR consulting business, now putting on our investor searcher hat, how does its business model contrast in terms of appeal compared to a PEO?
Yeah, there's definitely, it's a very profitable business, but it's not, you don't have all these different levers like you do in the PEO with regards to profitability. In the HR consulting world, kind of, I would say, to simplify it, we have two buckets. We have fractional clients that pay us on a monthly recurring revenue basis. So that's very appealing, obviously, right? But then we also have project work. And I think, my good friend Iris Levine has been on here before, right, with the Porch Company, and she talked about project work. You've had other people who have come on that bought pure project work companies. Like, I think as searchers, I agree with them. Like, we need to be more open to the project stuff, because that, like, there's a lot to be said around what that looks like from a revenue and profitability standpoint. And so, we're we're about 60-40, 60% recurring revenue, 40% project work. And that's where I want to continue to kind of stay at that level. I don't want to go heavily one way or the other on that. I really like the mix that we have right now, but that might not be, the search world, the traditional search world, right? Like that might not be as appealing for folks. And, so I think that that's the difference between us and a PEO strictly from a searcher's lens, is that there's not as many levers to pull on profitability. Whereas I mean, in the PEO, it's all recurring, right? Like you pull and you have everybody's bank accounts. It's wild how easy it is. Like you give them your bank account because you have to pull payroll as a PEO, and then they pull the admin fees at the same time, right? Like it's not, like you're not waiting for anybody to pay your invoice. You just pull it all every week or biweekly or whatever their payroll cycle is. So, it's really nice, very predictable revenue on the recurring revenue on the PEO side. Whereas, I got a little bit of AR, like it's nothing crazy, but, we've got 30-day terms mostly. Some are on 0, some are on 30, some are on 45 because that's their like corporate policy or whatever. But so, I'm waiting for a little bit to get paid, but, it's nothing crazy from that perspective. So it's still great. It's still a very appealing process. And I think my experience in HR made this incredibly appealing to me because I just felt like I have a really high shot of being successful at this versus going out and buying, like I looked at a sandbag company, right? Up in, I can't remember where it was, I think Indiana, somewhere in the Midwest. And they like manufacture sandbags, fill sandbags, but like the giant ones that they use for like flooding and stuff, right? Or construction sites or whatever. And I'm like, I'm going to have to learn manufacturing, delivery, like transportation, like, just stick to what I know. I could probably be successful at that because of my just general willingness and grit and I'm just going to push forward and make things happen. But why not stay in the lane that I know and I've got a lot of experience and I've been a CEO already in a company that's in this space. So that's where I was like, let's just focus on HR.
Great. Well, we're going to come back to the attributes of this industry and of the business you bought, but let's get back to the plot for a minute. I've taken us far afield. So your search, you come back to Orlando?
Yes.
Okay. And you decide to look for an HR consulting firm or something in HR?
I was looking at PEOs, payroll companies, HR consulting, background checks. But it was within the HR realm, but there's a lot of niches within that as far as actual service providers. So any of those. Yeah.
And what about size? You said that you didn't want it to be too big. Everybody, which is a little counterintuitive. Everybody wants to buy as big as they can. Not you, because you didn't want to babysit.
Yeah. I wanted under $1 million and, typically at the size of SDE. So $250 to $1 million in SDE. I didn't want to go any bigger than that because again, I didn't want to fundraise. I didn't want to have investors. I wanted to fully own this thing, even if it meant going a lot smaller and growing it. And SBA was on the table, of course, but like I didn't want to have to go out and get investors. So
and that's for the reason that we've already just talked about, that you didn't want to be on anybody else's timeline or
not yet. Yeah. Maybe eventually, but not now.
Fair enough. And so SBA was on the table, but it also sounds like from your balance sheet, you might have been able to buy something without the benefit of SBA.
I think it came to a point where I was in a searchers group. This is where I know Iris, Levine, and Ben Miller. They started a search group just within searchfunder.com. And so they just put out a request to say, hey, we're looking to start a group. And I started to join. And we were having these biweekly calls. There was like, I think 8 of us at the time that were searching. Amazingly, 4 of us bought, which was like within 6 months. It's a pretty incredible group. And a few of them are still searching and getting very, very close. So we're really excited for them as well. I started to hear like what the SBA stuff was, what they were kind of the hurdles, the challenges. And I think it's worth it. And again, if I went bigger, I would have absolutely gone through that. But I found an opportunity that was small enough that I said, I'm not going to swear on your podcast, Will, but I was like, F it. I'm just doing it. Like, I'm going to invest in myself. Like, I have the money to do it. I'm just investing it right now. Like I live alone. It's just me. I have no other mouths to feed. I've got a ton of flexibility. The car's paid off, right? Like, it's like, it's like, I'm just going to spend my money on me and I'm going to do this and make this investment in me. And so it ended up being something where I didn't need to go down the SBA route. And frankly, the size I bought, there was just all these really strange hurdles, like, because I did talk to a few of the lenders, and either I was looking for too small of a loan because I wanted to put in money and I wanted to do seller financing. So I ended up was like, all right, it's going to be a pretty small loan. And they're like, still 6 figures, but like low 6 figures. And they're like, well, we have these minimums, da, 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 da. And then it'd be like, well, we can't do home-based businesses. Well, we're all remote, so I guess we're a home-based business, right? Like it was just these different hurdles where I was like, I just don't want to mess with this. I want to get this deal done. I believe in myself. I know I'm going to get my money back very quickly. I'm just going to spend my money on
this conclusion
right now. So
to not use the SBA that you're talking about, this sort of F it, I'm doing it alone thing, was after seeing this particular opportunity. Okay,
that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I first went into the search, it was very much like SBA. And I know if I find something bigger that I like, I can get investors. I felt very confident. And so I had my own money. I knew I could get SBA and that I could get investors if I needed to. That was my plan. Like those are my levers that I was going to pull.
And tell us the name of the business that you did buy.
Seay HR.
Seay HR, spelled SEAY HR.
Correct.
And okay, so tell us how you found Seay.
So I, I did all the things you're supposed to do. I made the calls. I was going to industry conferences. I was working my network because I'm super networked in the PEO space and the HR space. I was working with all of the attorneys that work in that space, the healthcare brokers, the work comp brokers, the investment bankers, like everybody was in the space. I was networking the heck out of it, reaching out directly to business owners, was going down the line with some of them, had a few really meaningful conversations, started to get into some diligence. And I went to lunch with a prior colleague of mine here in Orlando, a gentleman by the name of Scott Milson. He had recently retired. He had put on LinkedIn that he wrote a book. And I was just like, we had a great time working together. I was like, hey, would you mind, grabbing lunch sometime? Literally nothing to do with my search at all. It was just a totally casual, friendly meetup. And in the conversation, he said, hey, would you be interested in a HR consulting firm? I know a guy here in town. I was like, yeah, absolutely. Tell me more. And he was like, he's got to be close to 80. And I know a few people have taken a turn to try and buy this thing. I don't know, but I would wonder if he'd be ready now at this stage in his life. And I was like, sure, absolutely. So that's how I found it. After doing all of the actual stuff that you're supposed to do in search, it ended up being just a friend and former colleague here that we're having a social lunch that it just came up. Now, I think you still got to do all those things, Will. I'm not saying ditch the ETA model.
Marci, let me interrupt you really quickly because it mentioned too how you had the list of all the PEOs.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I had the full list of every PEO in the United States, including their CEO name, email address, and that was gifted to me by another former colleague of mine that was really supportive of my search. And he was in the space and in a consulting model, and so he would consult with PEOs. So he built this list over many, many years, and he just said, "Here, have it." And I hope I hope you can find the right PEO through doing this. So I had all these crazy advantages, and then ended up being going to lunch with a friend that got that. So, but I still think those are really important steps to take of doing the reach outs, doing the cold calling. I had letter campaigns going. I had letter campaigns going. I did all of the cold reach out, which gave me a lot of at bats, right? So by the time that I actually got to Sandy C, which is the gentleman I bought the business from, I had 20 or 30 at least. That's probably a low estimate. Initial conversation with business owners. So that by the time that I'd gotten to him, I kind of had it I had it honed in. So I'm glad I had that experience and went and did those reps and did that work, because it gave me a lot of access to people's balance sheets and P&Ls to kind of start to see what I wanted to look for specifically in our industry. It gave me a lot of conversation, dress rehearsals, right? And so by the time I got to the main event of this guy, I was pretty honed in, and it was a pretty smooth process. But but he also was very, very ready to sell, which we can talk about in a second. But yeah, so I'm still in favor of doing those things. I think they're important and it must happen, but I just happened to find it through a mutual pal.
Well, you wouldn't be the first, Marci, to have gone through the whole rigmarole of proprietary outreach and then to have just, it fell in your lap from, somebody down the block or whatever.
And I think that's part of it too, Will, is just to encourage listeners that are searching of do the reps, do the things everybody says to do, but tell everybody and their mother, right? Bring it up in every cocktail conversation at every, T-ball game just tell everyone that you're looking, and beyond social media, but in real life when you're having conversations with anybody, because you never know. I was just on a call with a client of mine, and they're looking to sell. Like, and I connected him with another gentleman here in town. Like, you just never know. I mean, brokers are important. Like, there's the whole industry around buying and selling businesses, obviously, but just put it out there, because I think that can just only increase your odds. And so that's my encouraging thought.
Great, Marci. And so now you tell us about Seay and Sandy.
Sure. So Sandy was about to turn 80. He had owned this business for about 44 years. He had bought it from another gentleman in the 70s. So I'm actually the third generation owner of this HR consulting firm. So we'll be 60 years old next year. And based here in Orlando, Florida. We do not have an office anymore. He had given it up during the pandemic, and so we all work remotely. And we serve clients here in Central Florida and also in about over 20 states. We're national, an HR consulting business. And when he and I first met, we had a number of mutual connections. Central Florida is a small area. It's a big small town in that regard. So he had reached out to my former CEO here in Orlando and said, "Hey, Marci's interested in buying my business. Should I talk to her? Is she legit?" And thankfully, his name is Dane Williams. Thankfully, he immediately said, "Yeah, yes, absolutely. Like if you're going to sell your business, sell it to her." And so I had that good connection and network here that when I got on that first call with Sandy, it was like immediate trust, let's get this done. He was getting at an age where he had really taken his foot off the accelerator, but the business was still holding strong. It wasn't growing, but it was still holding strong because of the recurring clients. Our average client tenure is over 10 years old. We've got some clients that have been here for over 40 years, which is just incredible. But there was just so much opportunity. And that's what really drew me to this business was not, I mean, the current clients and everything is great, but like we were delivering and are delivering really, really high quality service. He was undercharging, so we needed to up that. But we had these really great relationships. And what really drew me to this business was he had these kind of channel partners with associations, with healthcare brokers, P&C brokers, that I felt like that was really an interesting part of this business. Yes, of course, it's the direct relationship that we have with small business owners, medium-sized business owners that work with us for recurring, fractional HR, but also for project work. But there was also this component of these partnerships that I said, okay, that's where I feel like there's a lot of untapped value within this organization to really help grow it without having to build out a giant sales organization or something along that line. So that's one of the things that really drew me to this, Will, in addition to it being here in Central Florida, because my search was national. I was looking at Texas, Nevada, Illinois. I mean, anywhere that there was a PEO or an HR company for sale, I was having that call. But then this was right in my backyard. I lived here before. It's been 12 years, but I lived here before. I've got friends and family here. My mom is here. My aunt is here. Like there was just a lot of things that were like, okay, the stars are aligning here. Let's pursue this.
Give us a sense of size of business here.
Sure. So we have about 85 clients that pay us recurring. And then we probably got about another 100 or so that we do reoccurring projects with every year, every 2 years. And then there's a handful that we do project work on top of that. So a little under $1 million in revenue. But a lot of room for growth and opportunity. He was working with a lot of 1099s. I switched that now to W-2s as far as the team is concerned.
So his whole team was contractors, aside from him?
He had one W-2. Sissy, who is still with us, she just celebrated her 21st anniversary with the organization, and it's fantastic. And the others were 1099s. And, I think knowing that, right, I knew that was a bit of a risk, but I was like, okay, I think I can find a good team. I built a great team at Mackay. I've built great teams in the past. I feel confident in my ability to do that. And so that felt like I could mitigate that risk. The other thing that was that some of your listeners might scare them off a little bit, but like he didn't really have contracts with his clients. And there were contracts, but they had no teeth to them whatsoever. They weren't actual legal agreements. They were people signing saying, here's how much I'm going to pay you per month. And it was like, great, like there was no terms to it. There was no actual what it's going to be, how long it is. And these most of them were 10 plus years old. So I knew that I was buying a business that on day 2, everybody could walk away. But again, I felt like I had the chops and the industry knowledge, and Sandy was willing to stay on for a period of time. Sissy was staying. I felt like we were going to that was a risk I was willing to take. That was probably the biggest risk in this entire thing that I took.
That the contracts
were good.
were super loose.
Yeah, that anybody could walk. But, being a small business owner myself, whatever, you do business with people you like, you trust them, you build relationships. Like if they want to screw us over, sure, they can, right? But these folks weren't going anywhere as long as we continued to deliver the high quality of HR consulting that we have been for the last 60 years. They would have no reason to leave. Or I wasn't going to go in and triple their rates or something like that. Like that, I'm not stupid about it.
And
right?
of these 85, how was their customer concentration, or was it pretty evenly distributed across these 85?
It was extraordinarily.
So there was no threat that you would lose some big contract. If you lost a handful, you can build them back.
Exactly. Yep. That was it. That felt very, very much that risk was also being mitigated through that route. Mm-hmm.
And say more about the partnerships that the business had with these associations. Describe that in more detail, and mention the pest control thing.
Yeah. So there's about 15 associations or healthcare or P&C brokers that partner with us at Seay HR. And what they do is they pay us a monthly or certain cadence of fee to be an HR hotline for their members. So a great example of that is the National Pest Management Association, or the NPMA. They've been a 10-year plus partner, really great partner. And so they pay us for an HR consulting hotline that then is passed on to their members. And they've got few thousand members across the country of mostly family-owned pest control companies. And so as a member benefit, as a member of the association, you can call us and get up to an hour of complimentary HR consulting each year. And so that is a great channel for us because, they call in, they have a great experience. They say, hey, I don't have anybody in HR. Can you help us, right? Can you be our HR person? Can you be our HR team? Absolutely. Or no one's looked at our handbook in 15 years. We should probably take a look at that, right? Yes, absolutely. We can help you with that. Or an employee investigation or a challenging situation, things along that nature. So it's an opportunity for us to offer these HR services to a captive audience that the association is trust with us. We are able to be in their magazine. We provide them content for their magazine, content for their members, webinars, things along that nature. I've spoke at 2 of their conferences. I'm going to be at their Pest World conference this fall. It's just a really great relationship of, starting to build for me, these pest control owners, but they've had this relationship with Seay Management for many, many years, or Seay HR for many years. And, just building on that, right, of Sandy in his later years of owning the business just wasn't, he would give them, things here and there, but I'm proactively going at it with them and to build collaboration of what can we provide to you that's going to be valuable for your membership, right? Because if their membership grows or retains and grows, that's an additive for us, right? So I'm very willing to support the association in a really meaningful way, and they're very supportive of us, and they use us for HR stuff too, as the actual nonprofit, is the association. So at the headquarters there. So we've got a great, and so multiply that over the number of relationships that we have in these association world, and it's a really great way for us to get our foot in the door as a trusted provider for folks within that industry.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like an amazingly valuable relationship to have. And so you have multiple of them, not just with a pest control association?
Yeah, we have about 15 of them. And they were all, I think I brought in one since I've joined. So 14 of them were here when I acquired the business. And that was the real key of there's something really here, Will, right? There's some real untapped, we just need to put some fuel on this fire and start to gain in activities with them and recognition with them. It's interesting because I was just at the National Pest Management Women's Forum. So it's only women in the pest control industry. And there's over 400 attendees. It was in Austin. I was on a couple of panels there, and I was talking to a woman. We were going to dinner that evening, and she was saying gosh, I think your services is one of the most, the hidden gems of being an NPMA member. And I was like, I want to be the flashy gem. I don't want to be the hidden gem, right? But we're going to get there, right? And so all these things that we're doing is and my point in saying that is the folks that do utilize us within the NPMA membership love us and are willing to talk to their peers and are willing to do testimonials, right? So I'm not fighting or pulling teeth to try and get anybody to help us in there. It's here's a great opportunity for us to deliver these really great HR services that we're showing value to the members, and just being able to do that for more of them as they need it is really important, and is a great purpose for us as a company. And our team loves them, and they love our team.
It's a remarkable structure too, because as you said, you're basically being given trusted vendor status, exclusive. Yes. So I assume there's no other HR provider who's being.
That's correct.
To this whole targeted channel. And you're doing webinars for them. So you're getting all this promotion, and you're being paid by the association. I mean, now understanding that, you're providing a certain block of hours to the association.
Sure.
But that's something that you would do for new business anyway, is provide a first free call or whatever. So in other words, you're basically, not only are you not paying for amazing marketing, we call this negative customer acquisition cost. It's almost like a negative CAC. You're being paid to acquire customers. I may be taking that a little bit far, but you understand my point. I mean, you would probably pay for this.
I think so. I will say that they pay us. They don't pay us a ton, so I don't want to overinflate that. We are not profitable on what. If we just take what they pay us for the member hotline, we lose money on that. It's not a ton, but we do, right? So there is a cost to us for doing that. It's mitigated a bit, it's made less by the fact that they pay us on it. But the more, and that's interesting. I was kind of challenged on that model by somebody when I was buying the business, and they were like, well, but you don't want too many of them to call you, right? Because then you lose more money. And it was like, no, that's not. I want them all to call us, because if I'm spending, like, that's only going to lead to 10, 15 pest control companies becoming clients of ours, right? Like they're sure, there's going to be the ones that call us and never do anything more with us, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. But like we deliver at such a high quality of work and at such a great value that, one, we should probably raise our rates even more. But besides that, like it is meaningful for their purpose and what they're doing, and it does create an opportunity for us. Now we still have to convert those clients, right? But I want all that activity. I want, like, just bombard us with calls from pest control companies, because we do such a good job that a lot of them naturally convert without having to really sell them on much. They're like, oh, we were thinking about, do we need to hire somebody for full-time HR? We don't really need that quite yet. Maybe someday we will, but right now, could you help us on a part-time basis? Yes, absolutely. That's our lane. Let's do it. And then when they grow, we can support that new person. That's great too.
And to your point about perceiving real value from these relationships or these agreements that you have with the Pest Control Association and others, because, and I'm going to press you on this, Marci, because this is a small enough business where, and given your own expertise, that you might say, why not start something from scratch? You might say, no, I don't actually believe that, but let's steelman this, because the revenue isn't so high that you're buying tons of revenue. You said it's a sub-$1 million business. It's this gentleman, Sandy C, one W-2 and the rest contractors. So contractors come and go. You can find other contractors pretty easily, I presume. And so there's one. So in terms of headcount or organization, it's a pretty thin, frankly, organization. You are already very well networked in the HR world, so you could probably bring your own people along with you on this journey. Is it small enough that you said to yourself, what am I buying here? Or should I just build this? I could rebuild this organization in a year or something. I mean, and we know that those relationships you have with the associations is part of the answer. That's a big part of the answer.
That's a huge part of the answer.
And is there more, or is that the answer?
Yeah, I will take it like way back to the beginning of, in my career, was that mindset of like, I wanted to be a business owner. And I thought the only way to accomplish that was to start something from scratch. And being a part of a couple of successful startups in Chicago, I was like, that's not the 0 to 10, not me. Like, could I do it? Could I fight through it and make it? I find no joy in that whatsoever. And part of this is about like creating a joy and continuing the joy in my life and a lifestyle that I want to do. Like the reoccurring revenue and the recurring and reoccurring revenue that I bought in this business, in addition to those partnerships, like gives me the cushion to do some fun stuff, right? I can test out some marketing. I can play, right? Like I didn't have to start from the square one where it's like, how do I forward my first employee? When do I pay? Like I didn't have, like, I got to skip that whole piece. And for me personally, if like for other people, they might say, Marci, that was stupid of you, right? Like, what are you thinking, right? Like, but like for me, for knowing and thank God I had all of these experiences in my life where I got to try out being at a startup multiple times, where I got to be at a VC backed, where I got to be at a PE backed firm. Like I got all these exposures, and to be able to really kind of get to a point now where I'm like, I kind of know what I want and what I don't want. And what I don't want to do is be the 0 to 10 person. I want to be the 10 to 100. And that's what I did at Mackay. That's what I'm doing here. And so you're right. It's a small business. Could I have done it? Maybe, I don't know, but I wouldn't have. I probably wouldn't have loved it. I probably would have been mad. I wouldn't be where I am right now in the year that I've been at this business. And
also, Marci, I said
it was worth it for me to buy.
I said, Marci, a year, but you couldn't rebuild this business in a year. It would take. No. I mean, even putting aside the association, amazing unlocked value thing, or as yet unlocked value thing, right? Just the 85 recurring revenue clients, you couldn't get that in a year. That would take. So you, if nothing else, you bought a 3-year, 4-year acceleration. And that's a lot, especially where you are in life, where you have a balance sheet, where you have the luxury of trading. You have more money than time. A lot of people don't. They have more time than money. And so that you have to think about that trade. You have more money than time. And so you should be buying time. The other thing, which we haven't explored, which is further reason why this was a slam dunk to buy for you in particular, we haven't talked about what you paid and how you structured the deal, which was quite appealing. So that's also an enormous part of the value here. Talk us through that, please.
I had a very motivated seller, about to turn 80, was really very, very proud and should be of the great legacy that he built over the 40 plus years that he owned this business after acquiring it from somebody else. And he had a couple of offers in the past, and for whatever reason, they didn't go through. I've talked to some people that actually took a swing at buying the business. And, my understanding is at the time he was asking for things that were not reasonable for what the business was doing. By the time I got to him, he was basically like, if you don't buy this, I don't know what I'm going to do. Right. And so I was coming from a very, a very leveraged point from a negotiation standpoint. With that said, really good guy, high quality individual. I wasn't going to take advantage of the situation. So I offered him a fair price. I can't give the exact amount, but let's call it mid 6 figures from that perspective. And he
can you give the multiple, Marci?
It was about a tiny bit over like 2.2 of SDE.
Okay.
And obviously less than revenue, less than one-time revenue. And he immediately said, okay, so I put together an LOI. He didn't have counsel look at it or anything. I think his CPA might have looked at it and said, okay, and signed the LOI. And he said to his CPA and Sissy, the team member that's been on for a long period of time, he said, give her literally anything she asks for. I don't need to be involved. So I did hire Hollywell. Mike and Carrie helped me with a very light Q of E, because I started to get emotionally attached to the deal. And I was like, I gotta have somebody that's not attached to this, like make sure that
wise of you, Marci.
Yeah, that I wasn't missing something that was like right in front of me. And Carrie Roach was the associate that helped me, and she was fantastic and validated that what I was seeing was all legit. And that it was going to be a good investment from that perspective. And so it took about 2 months total from the initial Zoom call to closing date. I would say the only drama that happened in the whole deal was that he waited until the week of close to hire an attorney to look at the deal. And I was really nervous about that, because I was like, what attorney is going to turn this around in like a day? Turns out the attorney turned around in like 2 or 3 days, asked for things. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that, because it's 3 days before closing and you didn't get an attorney. I'm not trying to screw you over. I gave you a very, very fair deal here, right? And so
you guys had a closing date agreed to, and he just didn't have his attorney even look at it until a week before closing.
He didn't even have an attorney. He didn't know the guy until about 10 days before closing, and it was referred to him through a friend. And then met the guy and was like, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's the work. I mean, I had Ackerman as my attorney. Like I had I had a legit purchase agreement and he didn't have anybody looking at it until the week I was like, oh my gosh. So, and the attorney that he had was good and tried to do stuff. And I was just like, well, I'm just going to say no. The date that he was set was his date. I didn't choose that date. He was driving towards May 31st of last year. And I was like, this is your date. You want to do, I'm willing to push back. And he was like, no, let's do it. Let's do it. So I gave him every opportunity, but I was like, I'm not giving you these things in the 11th hour, which were smart things to ask for. I wasn't going to do it. And,
you knew that he had said to Sissy, give Marci whatever she needs. He probably, and maybe you were operating under this assumption, he probably also told the attorney, don't get it done. Just get it done. Yeah. You knew that was his psychology. That was a very powerful thing to know.
Right. But, for all of our lovely attorney friends, right? Like the attorney did the right thing of adding value. It wasn't like he was trying to bill him on it. It was like, no, Sandy, you should push back on this. Like the attorney was good and probably would have had some meaningful negotiation tactics if we'd done it a month earlier. Yeah. We didn't. So we got it done. We closed and he did, I paid him 60%. He did 40% seller financing. So an incredible amount of seller financing on it.
And how did you come to that 40% seller note arrangement?
Not anything very scientific. I had a friend who did a deal and he did 40-60 and I was like, all right, I'll do 40-60. It was truly just like, I guess this is what people do. And I'm sure I sent it around in my search funder group with Iris and Ben and Brett and them. And I'm sure they were like, okay, I don't think I got any like meaningful pushback of how to calculate that. And so I was like, he just accepted it. He was going to accept probably anything I put in front of him, which now I'm like, I should have lowballed. No. I did the right thing. It was a very, very fair deal on my side. Yeah. Like I got an incredible deal on it. I just had a very, very motivated seller. So he did the seller note. I paid him the 60% at close and then the 40% is over a 5-year horizon. So I've got 4 more years left in that. I can pay early on it without penalty. So just a lot of things that I think, I feel comfortable. There's been no issue. Actually, he actually asked me, he's like, can you push back paying me until this date on it? Like so I think if I went to him, I was like, hey, money's tight this month. Can I pay you my promissory note a few weeks later or something? I think he'd be fine with it. I haven't had to do that, but like, it's very copacetic. And he worked in the business as a consultant for the last year. He is now at the end of this month, he is fully retiring. Good for him at 81. And so proud of him for that. But he's still like, if you need anything, call me. And I'm like, I know I know and I trust I can do it. We go to lunch about every quarter. So it's just been a really great relationship throughout the process. But yeah, he scared me a little bit when I was like, do you have an attorney yet? And he's like, no. I was like, what are we doing? Are we selling this? Because I'm spending a lot of money on an attorney. Is this happening? He's like, yeah, it's happening. We're fine. And we were
Okay, Marci. And so I know you can't give super specifics, but this was less than $1 million revenue business. So some 6-figure number. And then, so some number less than that, it was the SDE, and then you paid 2-ish for it. So we'll assume the purchase price is, it's obviously in the 6 figures. 40% of that was financed. So you didn't use an SBA loan, as you've covered. So you basically went out of pocket some 6-figure number.
Yep. Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And felt completely great about that. Like there was no, like when I was sending that wire, there was no emotion around that at all. It was like, I am beyond like, let's do this. Like this is the easiest money I've ever spent. That's an exaggeration. I had a lot of thought into it. I want to be very clear. I was very intentional about all this or whatever, but like when I looked at the numbers and saw the opportunity and it aligned with the lifestyle that I wanted to live, this was a really, it was a perfect investment for me to make with my capital.
Your risk tolerance goes up when you have a healthier balance sheet, or maybe another way of putting this is there's not that much risk to this. You could lose every dollar, and you would still have a respectable net worth. It could go on to your next thing. You'd be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not obviously not the goal, but yeah. And I think, there's always, I can go back to PEO. I know I can. There's
Right.
not many successful exiting CEOs that are out there in the PEO space. I think that would be very appealing for somebody to have on their team, or in their portfolio to run a PEO. That's just not what I want to do right now. And so, yeah, I felt very much like this is absolutely the right risk for me to take. Absolutely. Like no questions asked. And again, I'm not doing SBA. I don't have a PT.
Right.
Like there's not
Right.
it's just me. It's just me. I'm only answering to myself. And listen, I worked really, really hard with other people's money for the first 20 plus years of my career. Right. And like took really good care of it and made a lot of people a lot of money. Like that's not my purpose or my goal on this, but like I felt very confident that like I'm not going to screw myself over, right? Like I'm going to do well on this. Like there's just no way around it. That's just who I am. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to build a great team. I'm going to find great clients. Like,
well, and this is the industry that you know so well. I mean, I
know it. Yeah, exactly.
This is so de-risked by the fact that the business buyer fit is just could not be a tighter fit. I want to now explore more the business model here. Concisely, how are you going to grow this?
I think that if I would be lying to myself and to you and the listeners if I was like, oh, I don't care if we grow it or not. That's just not my nature. That's like not my DNA. My DNA is competitive. I like to grow things. I like to figure that roadmap out. I like to be able to deliver to more clients. But I also don't want to be like, I have to grow 10x in order to hit some number or whatever. Like it's going to be what I believe is right for the team and for us and for our clients for the best experience. And so we've been focusing on, when I bought the company, it was kind of like, we can do any HR for anybody, which is true. That is an accurate statement. But as far as spending and spending my time and investing back into growing the business, I mean, we're up 30% year over year on just me organically networking and our clients referring us to other clients. I'm in YPO, I'm in WPO, like I'm reconnecting back to the Central Florida community in a meaningful way. That has brought us a lot of business, but that is not predictable, right? Like we don't know when somebody's going to refer. I got 3 referrals this week and like none of them were planned, right? So I want to have more predictable revenue pipeline from that perspective. So I partnered with a local company here called Clarity Marketing, and they are based here in Central Florida, and they focus on B2B marketing. And so I've been working with them. We've refreshed our website with, just kind of realigning our message of how we actually solve things for clients. And then we're focusing on some niches to test them out. So one is obviously pest control because we have that great relationship. We're also focusing on Central Florida as a geographical component. If somebody calls us from Chicago, like we can absolutely help them, right? But like I'm here, I'm networking. Let's see if we can capitalize on that. And then we've got 2 other partnerships. One is in like the linen rental industry for like hospitals, restaurants, that sort of thing. So an association on that. And then the Florida Roofing Association is another one we have a great relationship with and has a lot of members here in throughout the state. And so, and that's not discounting all of our other great partnerships that we have with associations. Those are just ones that I'm going to be spending some marketing dollars on, doing some digital marketing, some advertising, some things very specific to those different niches, just to test them out and see like, can we be the pest control HR company and like that, like really build that out and focus on it, because I just can't spend the money to compete with the giant HR companies out there to everybody, right? So that's part of it, is to have some real specific niche marketing and investing in that. I didn't mention this before, but the 1099s are no longer with us. For the most part, they do maybe a little project work here and there, but I hired another W-2 employee, Jackie Morris, who's extraordinary. So Sissy and Jackie are delivering on a consistent basis. I've got a couple of other 1099s that come in for specific project type work that they have expertise in. And so building out a really strong team. So I think that also gives me the confidence, Will, to go out there and really push on these different marketing initiatives, because I know we're going to deliver on the back end. And I'm building a bench of other really extraordinary HR professionals when the time is right, that to have them come into our organization as full-time employees is really exciting for me. But again, I don't need this to be a $15, $50, $100 million company. If it happens, it happens. But that's not the purpose for this for me is. So yeah, that's where we're focused on from the growth perspective right now. So we've got a nice little referral thing going, but I want to do some more dedicated things. And I'm doing all the sales and marketing. Jackie and Sissy will upsell clients on projects or things like that when it comes up, but I'm doing all the proactive outreach or, like the proposals and going through the discovery process with prospective clients. I don't know if that'll be forever for me, but I enjoy doing it right now. And it really helps me to build out an actual sales process because we've never had one here. So that if I was to hire somebody in to help us grow from a sales perspective, that we had some processes in place for them to build off of and not just come in and be like a wild, wild west, go sell whatever you can, right? So those are some of the things that I'm focusing on.
And are you paying yourself?
I am. Not much. I would say I'm not, and I were my previous salaries and bonuses and things like that. Like I am very intentionally reinvesting back into this business, and that is into my people, and that is into this marketing efforts. Like that is very much so where I'm spending what I would say what typically I could pay myself. But again, I have pretty low personal overhead, and I've got money in the bank. So like I don't want to spend all of my money that I've invested in other places right now, but I've got a bit of a cushion where it's like, I really want to grow this thing. And so I'm mostly reinvesting it back into our team, into these marketing initiatives.
The question of talent here. So you let go of the 1099s, you brought in another W-2. In so many of the businesses that my guests buy, talent is a big constraint, particularly on the blue collar side.
Sure.
This is not a blue collar business. This is a white collar business.
No.
What does it look like to acquire talent here?
I will give you a specific example. Before we hired Jackie, I posted a role for an HR consultant. I put it on LinkedIn. Now, granted, I put fully remote and anywhere in the United States because when I was in Hawaii, I had people on the East Coast. Like, I don't care where you are. In Philippines, like, I don't care where you are. Like, we can be successful no matter where you're at. I did an unpaid LinkedIn post of a job, and I had to shut it down within 24 hours because I had over 1,000 applicants on that job posting. Now, are they all qualified? Were they all the right fit? Absolutely not, Will. But I got it narrowed down to about 20 that really were very, very strong candidates for this role. And again, that was within just 24 hours of looking. And I found Jackie. Jackie was actually referred from Sissy. Jackie actually worked here at Seay Management in the past, went in-house at a local company here, and then came back to us when we posted this role, and has been an extraordinary addition to the team. But all that's to say is like, there are really great HR professionals out there. And so I think one, that would be, that gives me a lot of confidence in growing this thing, but also like the folks that I'm building this kind of bench of, they're all fully employed. So they're not even really looking. They're just really great people that I know or know through my networking that are interested in working at a company like what we're doing and how we're doing it, and the kind of clients we're working with and that sort of thing is very appealing to people who are currently already HR consultants in other organizations like us.
You mentioned the Philippines. Now I've heard you say it twice. What sort of work would go to the Philippines in this business? The work itself?
Well, that was in my prior business. I'm not doing anything currently.
Yeah. No, I understand that. But I heard you did it in your prior business, and I guess it's something that other firms do. You said now it's a differentiator that you are not doing it, that everybody's here. But for the sake of understanding, is this a business that is vulnerable to being offshored, and of course AI?
There are absolutely pretty large HR consulting firms right now that have offshored the vast majority of their client phone and email inbound, people asking for consulting, things like that. That are probably fairly talented HR individuals. I'm not in any way saying that that's not possible. I have not heard anybody have a great experience with that, but it is pretty cheap, right? So if you are a business owner that cost you're very cost conscientious and you've got to go with the lowest priced option, we're not it. But you might not get quite the level of service that we're providing. And with the type of experience that my team has, and as we grow, that we'll continue to grow as far as our experience. I've been a CEO of a company. And so when other business owners call me, or if I get something, if I get wind of something that my companies are going through, that my clients are going through, like I can relate directly as being a CEO. If you offshore that, like, that's not probably the case, right? On the AI side, it's kind of the same thing, right? Yeah, you can go on ChatGPT and you can ask some HR questions. Right now, it is very much going to give you an answer to give you a result. And it's built that way. It's intended to be action oriented. It's intended to, we're seeing all these studies right now, right? That it's like, you have to tell AI to not be as agreeable with you, right? So if you put into AI that, hey, so-and-so showed up to work drunk today, can I fire them? Like, it's going to find a way for you to fire them. Whereas we're going to say, time out. Let's get the full context of the employee, of the situation. What issues have we had in the past? What have we done with other people who maybe have shown up and we thought they were intoxicated? What does your handbook say, right? Like, it's a very interactive process that perhaps offshore you can get a little bit of that, but definitely in AI right now, we're not seeing that. Will they grow and potentially get to that point? Maybe. HR will never be in this particular case, like maybe payroll, but like consultative HR will never be a manual where you can say, if the client says yes here, you'd go down this path. If they say no, you go down this path. And then there's this nice tree to know how to support them in a meaningful way, like when you call up Verizon or something like that, right? Or when you call, your credit card company. That doesn't exist in HR. And I think you can try and build that to a certain extent, but it's not going to be that interactive process that people are looking for. That could come. People could be building that right now, right? But where I'm seeing it be beneficial is like, we use AI in an AI generative tool that there is an employment law firm that basically built a tool just for HR consultants where they dump in all of the state, local, and federal regulations and change it as it updates. So like, instead of us going on to like the Colorado Department of Labor website and trying to figure out with a regulation, what do you need to do on your last day of employment for an employee or whatever, like we can put this into a very specific generative AI platform that we've bought into, that we know and trust is going to be updated on a regular basis, is going to help us do that research significantly faster to be able to deliver faster to our clients from that perspective. So in those types of instances, there is ways to do it, but I still would not just go on any of the large learning models or the AI models right now and just put in what do I do for an employee in Colorado's last day, because they're pulling from all kinds of stuff that might not be accurate or might not be up to date. Whereas I know I'm looking at the actual legislature from Colorado onto what does the law say that we have to do on this particular scenario that we're putting into the system. So there are ways to supplement, to enhance. There's a lot of stuff in AI being done around checking payroll, making sure that benefits are being calculated correctly. Like I love all that stuff in it, but answer my question of how to handle this HR issue, it's not there yet. But we are. And so like that, I think that's where right now I'm really bullish on what we're doing, because I think there's going to continue to be businesses that either have complex HR things, more in that blue, gray collar space, that need to actually talk through some things with people or want that more of that consultative guidance. There's always going to be people who are going to be DIY, are going to do it on their own and going to look it up, and that's fine. But there's still this market that is really interested in what we're doing and we're growing. So I think as long as we can, as long as that continues to be the case, we're going to still have a business.
Let's talk about the market here, Marci, because I heard you say that there are some really big firms. So there are big companies here that you might bump up against. I want to compare this to, say, bookkeeping or accounting. What you'll hear often from that world is that growing an accounting business is not about the demand is not the constraint. There's plenty of small businesses who want your services. It's about good operations. And actually, in the case of that industry, there are fewer and fewer accountants. So hiring is a constraint. But I'm hearing from you that hiring is not a constraint here. No. So is the constraint the demand side? How competitive is this market? Where do you feel a constraint?
So that's a great question. I think that if I was willing to put many, many hours every single day into selling, that I would be growing it a lot faster. That is just not what I want to do. So I would say I am the constraint to some extent on this.
And for people listening, Marci, yes. Somebody maybe who does want to build a $10 million business and is wondering if this is the type of business they should buy. Do you think that they can?
You have to do outsourcing or offshoring on this. You have to have AI components of it. You have to have like chatbots and like, so I think you're just going to be up against some really heavily funded companies that are out there really far ahead of doing that, that are moving more towards the self-serve model with clients. And that is not the direction I'm building. That's just truly not the purpose of me buying this business. And so I have not modeled out what that would need to look like to get to those numbers, because I have genuinely no interest right now in doing that. And so I don't feel well versed in being able to tell you exactly how somebody would want to do that in the HR. Is it possible? Yes. Would you have to do it in a different way than I'm doing it? Also, yes. And so that's just not my plan or my dream for this. And so I just haven't, I don't have a really strong answer for you there, because that's just not where I'm spending my time, is trying to, envision that and try and build towards a model that can get us there.
Why did you say earlier that the revenue mix of 60-40, where 60% is recurring and 40% is project, that you like it there? Understanding that you had mentioned the thing about how a lot of guests will come on here and talk about how, well, in fact, a lot of guests have bought businesses that are project based, and
Right.
they're perfectly happy. Thank you very much. And I take that point, and I do think that people should be more open-minded about project versus recurring, and think truly more about the quality of revenue underneath that sort of oversimplification, that spectrum.
Right.
But if you could take it, why wouldn't you want more recurring? Why wouldn't you go to 100% recurring? I mean, if you could get it, if you could just...
I don't think, I don't think that is particularly so. Of course, yes, of course. If I could have,
just check
millions of dollars in recurring revenue, and that was it. Yes, absolutely, of course.
Okay.
But I think there's two reasons why I say that, like, I don't want to do that. So yes, if I could get that number of 60 to 75 to 80%, I'd go up on the recurring absolutely all day long.
Okay.
But I like the project stuff for two reasons. One is we have really decent margins on the projects. And it does allow us to get our foot in the door with a lot of these people through the channels. And if I was to immediately say, like, some of our large competitors, they will not do any project work. It's recurring or nothing, because of what we're talking about here, right? And their PE is like, or their firm is like, this is what we need in order to sell this in 5 years. I don't have that, right? But we do a project for somebody, and that turns into another project, or then they're like, okay, now we want to do a fractional HR service with you. Like, that is, we have a fairly high reoccurring rate with our project folks, and it's a really nice way in the door for us to then work with us longer term. I don't want to cut that. That doesn't make sense for me to cut that off for the type of partnerships that we have, those channels. I think that would be incredibly at a disservice to us and to our partners if we were to say, well, after you call us once on the hotline, after that, you have to pay us a monthly recurring. Like, instead, let's look at this. You've got this employee investigation. Let's help you through that. We're going to give you an extraordinary experience. We're going to charge you a fair rate, but we have good margins on it. And then you're going to say, you know what? We could use them more often. And that does happen quite often for us. So that's where, for me, I don't think it would be the right move for us and what type of business we have in order to completely lose all of that project work. Just go straight, we're only retainer or nothing for prospective clients that come through our doors.
Marci, I heard you use the word fractional at some point. It's kind of, so fractional HR is kind of a way to think about this business, or at least with the recurring agreements, the recurring business that you offer. You're basically a fractional HR for those clients. You hear a lot about fractional CFOs. You hear about fractional marketing, fractional CMOs. You hear about it less, if at all. Maybe I haven't been paying close attention. In HR, it seems like the model makes just as much sense in HR land as it does in CFO. But am I right that it's not as established as a thing as a fractional CFO?
I think you're correct. I do think it is growing though. And I think that particularly smaller business owners, let's call it, under 5 million in revenue, are really starting to see even larger though, anyway, but I think that you're starting to see more and more of these small to mid-sized business owners realizing the value of having these fractional experts that, you don't need to spend $120,000 on a full-time HR person. You might have HR in-house, and we have quite a few clients that have HR in-house, but then stuff maybe it's above their level, or maybe there just is too much for them, but they don't need that next person yet, right? Like, there's just a number of different models where it makes a lot of sense. And for those folks that are not aware of it, when we talk to them about it, when I talk to prospective clients, they're like, oh yeah, of course, absolutely, this makes sense. Like, I get it. And I use that, perhaps, a lot of them are telling me they have a fractional CFO already, or that, their CPA helps them on a fractional basis, or they have a fractional controller. And I'm like, well, it's the same thing. It's just an HR. It's like they get it, right? So I think it's growing in its understanding. I'm not having to educate people significantly on it because there's all these different areas where there is. And I think we're just going to see more and more of that as business owners realize that maybe other parts of their business can be assisted with AI. Maybe they want to focus more on, other kind of growth initiatives, things along that nature. And so having full-time headcount in these different areas might not be as required, because before you used to have an HR, right? You'd have like someone who was just doing payroll because you had to do it manually. Well, now that's primarily is done through technology. Okay, so what is that person doing now? Well, maybe now they're doing some more bookkeeping stuff. Okay, or I've got somebody who, they were doing like HR compliance work, HR, and they're like, well, we're kind of okay on that, but can you do more strategic things, right? So we've got somebody in house that's doing HR compliance work, but like the day-to-day HR, making sure we're staying out of trouble, but like we want something on employee engagement, or we feel like our culture's got a little bit of toxicity in it. Can we try and figure that out? Or often what happens, Will, is it's like we've had this HR person for 15 years and they're retiring. Can you come in and take a look and make sure that we're doing everything right? Just a fresh set of eyes and help us find a new person. Like, we will recruit for HR roles only. We don't do any other outbound recruiting. We do some recruiting process support, but like actual, going out and sourcing, we're not doing that in other industries, but we will do it for HR. So we often see that where it's like we're seeing a changeover in the HR industry of employees that are retiring. And so we're either backfilling them as fractional, or we're coming in and we're kind of cleaning up the book, so to say, so that the next person coming in has got, a little bit more of a modern situation of what's going on, and that they're coming into a cleaner situation from an HR perspective. So a lot of different models on that, but I think it's really growing from the fractional standpoint, and it's not, we're not going in and saying, hey, you can fire your HR person if you hire us. That's not our model at all. In fact, I would be really uncomfortable with that. But how can we add to what you're doing right now without having to hire a full-time person is really where people are seeing a lot of value in what we're bringing to the table.
Is it perhaps that like also that in, let's say, CFO or like a fractional marketer, that a business has, money is coming in and going out every day. So there's a constant and consistent need for somebody to be doing the CFO stuff.
Yes.
And same with digital marketing generally. Like, you basically have your campaigns running all the time. I realize there are exceptions. You turn it off sometimes. Whereas with HR, maybe your needs are more lumpy. You don't need somebody there doing something all the time. And so the fractional need is just not like getting onto a monthly contract, because you don't need HR services on a monthly basis necessarily.
Right. No, I think that's a great point. And I think that's why some of our competitors, they'll put, we'll give you an HR person. They'll come in, they'll be in your office every Monday. Well, HR isn't restricted to Mondays. And I've also seen contracts where it's like, we're going to give you X number of hours per month. Well, you could have nothing in a month. And then the next month you could have 6 people have a major issue that we need to do an investigation for. And so I've really thought a lot about that and worked with clients to try and come up with a good solution. So we do we do an annual block of hours. They're still paying us monthly for that, but like we'll give you X number of hours for the entire year. And so we can be lumpy and you can be lumpy, and you're going to still use them up because of our past experience. We know well enough of probably how much you're actually going to utilize this for. But so that's where I feel like we're trying to be thoughtful about that, because you're right. You got to close your books every single month if you're doing it right. You don't necessarily have to do things every single month. Now, I will say in certain industries, particularly blue collar, gray collar, we've got HR issues pretty consistently, right? So like, depending on the size and depending on your leadership style or how strong or weak your managers are, we have clients that literally call us nearly every day. I mean, like, so it really depends on the particular industry, the company, the culture, the management style. All of those things add up into how much do you really need this, what we're offering on a regular basis versus more of an ad hoc need. And so that's where we kind of have been creative about that to try and make it so that it makes sense for both sides, that we're covered on our hours, but I don't care if you use them in June or January, like, use them whenever, and we're going to be there for you no matter what, to make sure that you're taken care of through whatever challenge comes up, no matter the timing of that, because we can't predict it.
Great, Marci. Just 2 more questions, and then I'll let you go. This is just wonderful. Thank you so much for all this.
Thank you.
kind of related. So I'll just kind of blend these questions into one-ish. I think you said that you're not trying to do any of the service delivery. You are doing sales, you are doing marketing, so you are forward facing or outward facing. You're the face of the business. But any of the, and I guess maybe you said you do a couple of you'll do project stuff here and there, but for the most part, you are trying to work on the business, not in it, even though you have the expertise to do some of the actual service delivery. But mostly that's your vision here is just your two W-2s do all the work, generate all the revenue,
Correct.
essentially.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
But you do know the industry really well. So the question is, for all the people listening who might be intrigued by this business, could they buy this business? Could they buy this business without an HR background?
Of course. Yeah. I don't want to, there's nothing so unique about what we're doing or about HR that couldn't mean that somebody couldn't learn along the way or figure things out.
But it is a deep and broad field, deeper and broader than maybe we give it credit for. I mean, there are majors in HR. You can major in HR, can't you?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's some very rigid accreditations. I think there, so it's not the HR part of it that I would say. It's the running the business part of it. I think a lot of smart people could figure that out. Where I think I have an unfair advantage is that, I can understand, I can look through the emails that Sissy and Jackie are responding to clients and know exactly what's going on and understand and not feel like, gosh, did they do that right? I would never doubt them anyway because they're extraordinary. So I don't ever, that's never why I'm looking at the email. Usually I'm just curious as to what the topics are that people are asking about. And it's kind of seeing if there's any trends going on or things along that nature. And there's some clients where I'm always just kind of interested for them personally because I'm just want to make sure that they're getting taken care of from, not from our perspective, but what's going on in their lives. So when I talk to them, I know what HR issues they've got going on. But, I think that, I think I have a pretty unfair advantage from that perspective. I also have an unfair advantage in that I know what I want and what makes a really good HR consultant. So building my team, I think I very much have the ability to see and know what it takes to deliver at the level that I'm looking to deliver to our clients, because there's a lot of HR people out there. A lot of them are extraordinary. Some of them would not be able to cut it in what we're doing and how to the standard that I want to do it at. And I think, these partnerships, these relationships, of course, again, another smart person could come in here and I think figure these things out. But I think part of, and part of this is from coming in and running Mackay HR in Hawaii. And part of this is just, like my mentor, Dustin, he always says, do no harm. I think I knew enough about having come into another business and running it successfully and having an exit to not do a bunch of crazy stuff on day one here. And, I hear some of the stories from your things. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that on week one, but they did it and they're successful with it. But for me, I didn't make a lot of changes for the first 3 months. I really wanted to understand how much different was this from Mackay? What, and I think because I had so much industry knowledge, it didn't necessarily accelerate things, but I got to the heart of the matter a little bit better. I don't have to test a bunch of stuff. I really understand it. And I allowed for some space and for the transition to go really well. And then as I made changes, they weren't client facing, things along that nature, just internal things. We implemented a CRM. We got the generative AI technology, hired Jackie, right? Those types of things. I feel like I have heard and I've seen other folks that didn't know the industry as well. And they come in and then they make a lot of changes and they're like, oh shoot, maybe I should have done it. I kind of know what we need to do and when we need to do it. And I can decide, with Jackie and Sissy's input, the timeline for those types of things. So I think that makes it easier for me. Yeah. But, I don't want to give the impression that this is impossible. I think the real key thing for me was that Sandy was not delivering a ton of day-to-day client delivery. The projects were going to Sissy and the 1099s. I mean, he was taking calls and stuff, but they were taking the vast majority of the calls and the emails. So I wasn't coming in and then having to replace somebody who was a full-time consultant. That is really, really unique in HR consulting firms. Really unique, especially small ones, right? They're usually solopreneurs that then have built a small team and they, get more clients. They have a very small team that's part of it, but they the name is on his, I have the name on the company for Sandy C, but a lot of the clients that we interacted with were like, okay, I've already been working with Sissy for the last 5 years. No problem. Like it's no big deal.
Yeah.
And then they knew Jackie from before. Oh, Jackie's back. Great. No problem. Like it wasn't like, gosh, I talked to Sandy every day and he did all this project work for me. What am I going to do now that he's gone? That is not normal in HR consulting. So I think that's more of a key thing here, Will, of folks that are if they're looking in this space to acquire, is if they, especially in the smaller ones, financially, it won't make a lot of sense for you to hire like a GM or a leader or something like that. You're going to have to do it and you're going to have to deliver. And that's just something that I didn't want to do. And I really lucked out with this particular business that I don't have to be in the day-to-day with our clients delivering, because I've got two fantastic people that are taking care of it. And as we grow, we will add to that list. And then I will be focused, like you said, on actually running the business and growing the business and not client delivery on a day-to-day basis.
I think it says a lot about the robustness of this business that you had a seller who was not doing, well, I gather he wasn't super active, period. But in particular, he basically was working on the business, not in the business. And yet it was a one-person business with a bunch of contractors. That the business can perform with such a small footprint and still be delivering real value. Do you know what I mean? You'd never get to, well, maybe I'm wrong, but I would think that you just wouldn't be able to have an owner kind of step out like that in a blue collar business until it was much larger. I may be wrong.
I agree. I think that's why this is such a unique deal. Like I think in most scenarios, even, God, I'm trying to think, and I talked to other, as I was looking at this deal, I was talking to other people who own HR consulting firms in other parts of the country. And, even at like $3-4 million in revenue, like they're still delivering on the client delivery side. Like, I'm just like, oh my gosh, so I think I just really, really lucked out with this really unique kind of mix of things, that it was really small, but he wasn't doing a lot of the delivery. So I think that is not what you're typically going to find if you're out there looking. And frankly, I have been looking at other HR consulting firms and potential acquisitions, not as a full-time job, but if something comes across my desk, I take a look at it. And most of the time, either they are way too into actually consulting, or it's actually a staffing firm, like a sheep with wolf's clothing, right? Or wolf with sheep's clothing, right? Like as a staffing firm disguised as an HR consulting firm. And I don't want to do staffing particularly. So they're not the right fits for me. But most of the time it's because, like, gosh, what am I buying if you're delivering all the things as the owner of this company? Like, how would we make that transition? I know people that do it, but like, I don't know that that's something that I wouldn't have done that on my very first acquisition. Maybe in a tie-in, like I'm potentially doing as another acquisition maybe someday. That would make it easier to build in, because we're building a little bit of a platform in that regard. But as my first acquisition, that wouldn't have made sense for me to do at all. Yeah. That would go back to your point earlier of like, then just go build it from scratch by myself if I'm going to have to do this anyway. If I'm going to have to resell all these clients because, Sally's no longer their HR person as the owner of the business. I didn't have to do that with Sandy and this company. So I think that made it very unique for the size and the type of business that we're in this industry.
Marci, thank you again for such a thorough interview. I love the business. I love what you bring to it. I love your enthusiasm.
Thank you.
I'll put your LinkedIn. Yes. Is that the best way for people to reach out?
Yeah, absolutely. I also give my email address. It's Marci, Marci at seay.us. And you can go on our website. We work with a number of different people that are searchers with their prior to closing to do some due diligence, but mostly afterwards of like, okay, I bought this business now. What do I need to do from an HR perspective? So we work with quite a few from that perspective. So yeah, if there's anybody out there that's interested in learning more about that, we're happy to do that. But I also just love to talk to other people who are searching. And this is a real passion of mine. I'm investing back in searchers now. Like it's just, I believe in this model. I put my own money behind it. So I'm excited to, continue to see this. So I appreciate, Will, all that you do to help with growing the awareness and helping people feel empowered to do this. I just feel like I'm on absolutely the right path for me in my life. And so I just appreciate everybody's support in accomplishing that, and happy to pass that forward however I can.
The URL was seay.us.
That's for our email. This is a 60-year-old company, so our homepage is CHR, SEAYHR.com. SEAYHR.com.
Yep,
that's our website. Yep.
Right. Marci LaRouech, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Will. Appreciate it.
Hope you enjoyed that interview. Don't forget to subscribe to the Acquiring Minds newsletter. We send an email for every episode with an introduction to the interview, a link to the video version on YouTube, and soon, key takeaways, numbers, and more essentials from the interview for those of you who don't have time to listen or watch it. Subscribe at acquiringminds.co. You'll also find all our webinars there on the website, both those we have coming up and recordings of past webinars. At this point, there are over 30 webinar recordings, a wealth of information on all the technical nitty-gritty of buying a business. acquiringminds.co.